Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. More than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan here for 3 hours each week, talking about the history and tradition of the outdoors right here in this great state of Michigan. So what's new since we last talked? Well, it's now officially summertime, isn't it? Mother Nature has felt like it's been summertime for a while, and man, have we had some hot days. Oh, hot, miserable, August-like days. And then 2 days later, it'll be 70 degrees. And then 2 days later, it'll be 95 degrees. The temperature roller coaster continues. The temperature roller coaster that is weather here in the great state of Michigan. The old saying, if you don't like the weather, stick around for a few minutes. It's certainly true. But it is officially summertime now, and all of the wonderful outdoor activities that brings to mind. It's time for you to get out there. It's time to get your family out there. It's time to get your grandkids out there. It's time to take advantage of this very short, wonderful season we know as summertime here in Michigan. Because I'll tell you, I mean, we're coming up on the 4th of July real soon now, and the summer is going to slip by. No, it's not going to slip by. It's going to scream by like a freight train, and before you know it, it's going to be September. Well, that's okay because we love the fall, but I'm telling you, if you don't take advantage of these opportunities now and get out and go on the camping trips and the drives up north and the fishing trips and the wonderful sightseeing excursions here in Michigan, when it gets to be February, you're going to look back and say, man, I wish we would have done that. I know fuel. Listen, I know gas is ridiculous. You know, I'm filling up a boat and a truck, and it hurts every time I do it, but I refuse to let gas prices keep me off the water or keep me from doing what it is that I love to do. You just, you find ways to save that. For me, it's maybe smoking a few less cigars, right? But you find ways to make it happen. I did have something wonderful happen to me since we've last talked. It was actually last weekend. I was in Mason, down by Lansing. I was there for the Michigan State High School trap shooting tournament. First time I'd ever been there. It's my first time being around these high school trap shooting teams. There were 60 teams there from across the state. There were 1,000 young shooters. They shot 100,000 rounds from trap stations. So think of this. You've got young people with guns, 1,000 young people with guns, a lot of ammunition. Like I said, they shot 100,000 rounds, and there was not one act of violence committed. There was not one crime. There was not one shooting. There was not one mass casualty event. How can that be? If guns are truly a problem, how can you have an event with 1,000 young shooters shooting 100,000 rounds of ammunition and nobody got hurt? It seems to me that even the most, I'll choose my term here, even the least informed among us have to take a look at an event like that and say, you're right, Avery, it's not guns, it's people. Anyway, it was a wonderful event, and I thought it was just a great example of what a positive thing the shooting sports can be. There was 1,000 shooters there, but I bet you there were 3,000 parents, grandparents, supporters cheering these kids on. It was just it was a great event. We'll follow up on that after the break too. Like I said, I'm new to this whole world of high school trap shooting, but I'm very excited about it, and I want to get a little more involved in it at the local level as far as helping to sponsor my local team and promote it. I just think it's a great thing. And again, 1,000 young shooters, 100,000 rounds, and nothing bad happened. Think about that. To me, it just seems so obvious that it's not a gun problem. I have been out fishing. Been out fishing quite a bit lately, in fact, and doing pretty well. I got a real slow, I got to be honest, maybe a little bit of a, I don't want to say frustrating, but maybe a little bit of a disappointing start on the season this year. I just couldn't seem to get him dialed in. But I feel like that's starting to happen. I'm staying up in my skinny water, not too far offshore at all. Doing pretty good, pretty good. In fact, the last trip out, it was one of my charity trips from my church's Trinity Monitor Wild Game Auction. I auctioned off a couple of fishing trips there. By the way, people say, hey, how much does it cost to take a charter with you, Avery? I am a licensed charter captain, but I got that license just for the purpose of helping out charity auctions and fundraisers. So I don't do paid charters. If you want to fish with me, you can bid on a trip at one of these charity auctions across the state, and that'll help everybody out. But on this last trip, I had some good friends of mine from church out, and we actually got the biggest fish so far of the summer. It was wonderful. 27-inch fish in about 8 feet of water. And I got it on a good old-fashioned Hottentot. I know. For years and years, all we would run was Hottentots. Hottentot was the go-to bait for Saginaw Bay walleye. You know, over the years, people tend to get away from it. Now it's a flicker shad, flicker minnow, spoon, lead cord type bite, or for a lot of people, crawlers. Still haven't picked up a crawler this year. Still haven't put a crawler on the Angler Quest yet. But I ran a 3/8 ounce purple and lime green or chartreuse Hottentot, 20 feet behind the inside offshore board, and that fish hit it and just about buried that board. And it was so much fun to watch my guests fight and land and pose with that fish. I put a picture of it up on my Facebook page and my Instagram feed as well if you want to check it out. Couple of interesting things on that trip, though. Two things that kind of got my attention. Number one, I have a rule on my boat that you do not reach into a net with your bare hands to get a fish. That is a rule ever since I saw my dad put a treble hook from a J-plug into his finger to the bone, and the fish was thrashing around as the hook was scraping against his finger bone. So I have a rule. You do not reach into a net with your hand. You can go in there with pliers if you want, or you can knock the fish out. I don't care. Well, somehow, one of my anglers did reach into the net with his hand, and you know it, he got a hook in it. I mean, past the barb, in pretty deep. I saw it, and it made me cringe. I thought, uh-oh, we're heading back into town, heading back into shore so he can go get that thing cut out. Well, he's a tough old farmer. And he looked at that thing, and he grabbed a pair of pliers, and he just pulled it out. Pat's cringing right now. That's pretty tough. I don't think I could do that. But again, just an observation. I don't care if it's salmon or walleye or any good-sized fish, trout, any good-sized fish. If you're going to keep that fish and he's thrashing around in the net, do not reach in there with your hand. I also saw a couple of other things that I don't routinely think about so much. But when you have people who aren't used to fishing, they tend to reel fish in a different way. Like a more experienced angler will hold the rod off to the side or up or down or left or right or whatever. An inexperienced angler, and I didn't catch this because there's a lot going on when I have a bunch of people in the boat, reeling, and it was a young girl. She's reeling this fish in. She's got a nice pike on it, and she's pretty much got the rod tip pointed at the fish. The bait, a flicker shad, number 7 flicker shad, comes out of the fish's mouth, comes up, and it hits her right in the face. I thought, oh, jeez. Is it in her eye? Is it stuck in her? I mean, just because she's crying, of course, because she's scared. I thought, oh, this is going to be terrible. Fortunately, we had an eye doctor on the boat with us in case the worst was going to happen. But again, it didn't get her. It bounced off her face, and it got tangled up in her hair. So what could have been a bad situation wasn't. And it was a great day, and we got a lot of fish. But it got me thinking, I always wear sunglasses on the boat. I wear them because my eyes are light sensitive, but maybe it's not a bad idea when you're out there to always wear sunglasses anyway in case a bait comes out of the water or out of a fish's mouth. Just a couple of things to keep in mind, right? A couple of things to keep in mind to prevent a really good day on the water from becoming a really bad day on the water. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine show after the break, Josh Kroells. He's the director of the Michigan High School Clay Target Association. He's going to talk about that event and high school trap shooting in general. Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews. In hour number 2, Dave Kimar talking about lake trout fishing in Lake Superior off Stannard Rock. Casey Reitz of the DNR. And in hour number 3, Nick DeShano of Offshore Tackle and Wild Game Chef Dave Minar. So we've got a busy show coming up this week. I'm glad you're with us. My email address, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. My website, mikeaveryoutdoors.com. Do not hesitate to reach out. Welcome back to the Outdoor Magazine show, heard on more than 30 AM and FM stations across the great state of Michigan. My name is Mike Avery, also known as the Big Guy. So glad to have you along with us. You know, 3 of those stations, or some of those stations, include WZTK in Alpena, that's 105.7 FM. How about Tawas, WIOS, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM on twice each weekend there. And we can go north of the bridge to Marquette, WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. Check them out online at rapidriverknifeworks.us or stop by their showroom in the Yup on US 2 just outside of Rapid River. As always, I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket right now. I carry it all the time. Beautiful piece of art, functional, easy to sharpen, yet holds a good edge. They make pocket knives, they make skinning knives, they make axes, they make hatchets, they make kitchen knives, handmade by craftsmen in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Check them out online, rapidriverknifeworks.us. I was telling you in the opening segment of the show that I had a chance to see something wonderful last weekend, and it was the Michigan State High School Clay Target League Championship. Now, this is my first exposure this year is to this whole concept of high school trap shooting. My grandson, Carter, who was just an avid hunter and angler, but he had never picked up a shotgun until about, 2 months ago now. And he started shooting with one of my old single-shot 20-gauge guns. He graduated to my grandpa's semi-auto, and he really improved throughout the season. And then I had a chance to watch a bunch of kids like that last weekend in Mason at the state tournament. There were 1,000 shooters there from 60 high school teams across the state. They shot 100,000 rounds. Isn't that wonderful? Nobody got hurt. Nothing evil happened. Nothing bad happened. But the more I'm exposed to this whole concept of high school trap shooting, the more excited I get. So I reached out to Josh Kroells. He's the director of the Michigan High School Clay Target League, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Josh, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great. How are you, Mike?
I am doing fantastic. Listen, tell me a little bit more about this whole concept and that event last weekend in Michigan. What a great deal.
Yeah, so our program, we get the umbrella as Michigan, but then we're also the USA High School Clay Target League. So we started our program back in 2008 in Minnesota, and 3 teams, 30 kids, and now we're in 34 states, just shy of 1,500 kids, and just shy of 32,000 kids in the country, and it's continues to grow. Michigan is, no exception to that. So we are growing. Like you said, we had 1,100 kids in the state tournament. We started our program in Michigan in 2016 with 7 teams and 97 athletes, and now our spring season had 80 teams and 1,650 kids, and almost 1,100 of those registered for the state tournament.
I keep hearing about how it's one of the fastest growing high school sports out there. Is that true, or is that an overstatement?
I would say that's very true. We started our program in Minnesota. We were the state of hockey, and now we are the state of trap shooting. We had almost 12,000 kids in Minnesota.
And you're just wrapping up
pretty good.
Yeah, you're just wrapping up a big shoot there in Minnesota, right?
Yep, we just finished up our 9-day shoot in Minnesota. We have 20 trap fields, so we do that on 9 days, and just shy of 8,000 kids this year over the 9-day event there.
Wow. What's the appeal, Josh? Why are kids and families, I don't want to say flocking, but moving to this concept of state high school trap shooting?
There's a few things. The big appeal is just like you said, you had your grandson out shooting, and, kids that have never done it before, yeah, they maybe went duck hunting or something, but this is different. It's tied to the school. Every single one of our teams has to have permission to use the school name. Otherwise, we don't let them in our program. So just think, 1,400 plus schools in the country have to have permission to use the school's name. And then the appeal is the kids that are maybe not the fastest, biggest, strongest. They can participate in trap. They don't have to do tryouts. We let anybody, join the team as long as there's enough room for the coach. And the appeal there, they get to go shoot. They don't have to sit on the bench, and every score could make a difference. Another big appeal is it's virtual. So for our regular season, you just go to your local gun club, shoot your 2 rounds of 25 each week, and you enter them in online. So there's no travel. Everybody gets to participate. It's tied to the school. It's a win-win-win.
I do find it interesting that you've got that many schools who are willing to let a gun-related sport use their name. That's a big deal these days, Josh, but I'm not telling you anything.
Yeah, no, and it's all approved. We're not sanctioned anywhere in any state high school association. We don't want to be sanctioned. We just want to be recognized. So the appeal is there for the school because they're starting to see, wow, we follow the same guidelines as what the school would. So keep your nose clean, no drugs, alcohol, keep your grades up. That's appeal for these schools that have kids that maybe are not interested in playing baseball, volleyball, football, wrestling, whatever it might be, but they love trap shooting. So now, hey, I'm going to keep my grades up so I can go and shoot next weekend. Now the schools see the benefit, and a lot of schools have lettering and yearbook opportunities. So we have about 80% of the schools offer a lettering program, and 65% of the schools are letting their club team have a photo in the yearbook.
I loved the way, at least here at the local level, and I suspect this is the case across Michigan and across the country, how the season started out talking about safety. Before you guys can shoot, before you kids can shoot, we're going to talk about some things. How to do things correctly, safety gear, how to carry your gun. Pretty impressive program, Josh.
Yeah, and all of our kids in our program have to have a safety certification. So whether that's their state-issued firearm certificate or we created a safe certification through the league. So they have to have one or the other in order to participate. So that is one thing when they register. If they don't have it, they have to get it by our deadline. Otherwise, they're out. We don't let them in. So safety is our number one priority, then fun, and then marksmanship. So as you see and you look at our website and stuff, there's going to be things that we aren't boasting on the top shooter. That's great accomplishment for that kid or a team, but we're all about safety, fun, marksmanship in that order.
That website, by the way, is miclaytarget.com, miclaytarget.com. What does a kid need to get involved? I mean, you mentioned hockey. My nephew was in travel hockey, and I know how expensive that is. My granddaughter is in travel softball. I know how much that costs. I like the fact that the whole concept of high school trap shooting is a little easier to get involved in.
Yeah, like you said, you can use Grandpa's single shot, 20 gauge or 12 gauge, whatever it is, there's a good chance a kid can find a firearm somewhere in the family. And if not, there's plenty of coaches that are more than willing to help, get that kid started with borrow a gun. But to get started, it's just getting a, number one, obviously approval at the school. But then from there it grows. These teams continue to grow. Our average team size across country is about 30 kids. And it's because of that fact of it. It's easy to do. Once you get approval, then it's just a matter of growing. And, when fundraising, that's a whole other thing. It's expensive for anything nowadays. Ammo's an issue, but there's a lot of people out there, and I talk to people across the country, and they are more than happy to help the shooting sports industry. They're happy to help with growing these teams in their local community, because they might not be the basketball star or the jock. They're just a hardworking small business owner, and they're more than happy to help grow a local shooting sports team.
I did, too. I was talking with Al Herman, who here in Michigan, he's our state director of Friends of NRA. He said they actually have grants to help supply ammo for these schools. I wasn't aware that was out there. That's something we're going to pursue next year as well. But, yeah, there are a lot of people out there more than happy to get these kids involved in shooting and show shooting in a more positive light.
Yeah. There's so many people, and if you grab any team, you're going to have a kid that maybe never did anything with firearms at all, and their family does it. But they had a friend at school. Next thing you know, they are, trying it out, and that's a great thing, because that's your future. Maybe it's Defenders Forever, Ducks Unlimited, Deer Hunters Association, or, what have you, Turkey Federation. That's your upcoming members. So those are the groups that are really trying to help grow it as well.
It's called the Michigan State High School Clay Target League. Our kids were all shooting trap. Is it all trap, or is there some skeet?
So we do have skeet. Skeet's been very slow to grow in Michigan so far. Just a lot of it is just a matter of finding skeet facilities, And you need 2 shots, so you can't use Grandpa single shot if you're doing skeet. We offer 5-stand and sporting clays as well. So there's a couple other things that we have going. We have a college league, and we have a homeschool league as well. So those are things that we're just trying to continue to grow it by giving every kid in the country the opportunity with whatever they're in to get them in.
Josh, what's the difference between, and I don't want to go too much in detail, but just basically the difference between trap, skeet, and then you also mentioned sporting clays.
So trap is just from a 16-yard line. You're shooting 5 shots per post, they call it, to get your 25 targets, and you just rotate after each 5 shots. Skeet is going to be coming out of 2 different trap houses. Skeet house is a low house and a high house, and you rotate around 8 stations in a half circle, and they're going across, where trap is just right out in front of you. So trap is an easier one for kids to pick up on. And then we have 5-stand and sporting clays, and that's the one where you might have a target bouncing on the ground, target quartering away from you, target coming towards you, through the trees, off a tower, all sorts of different things for the 5-stand and sporting clays.
My grandson Carter is shooting a 20 gauge. I had some people recommend, boy, you need to shoot a 12 gauge. Your thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, I would say probably a good 80% either started with a 12 gauge or they go to a 12 gauge. It's just some of the kids, just depends if they can handle it. It's usually those 6th graders that are going to be using a 20 gauge, and a lot of the time they realize, yep, the same recoil. If I can handle a 12 gauge to find one that fits, they're graduating up to a 12 gauge. You'd have more pellets going out there, so the better opportunity to hit that target.
Josh, hang tight. We got to take a break here, but you said something that got my attention. 6th grade. I thought this was all high school. Hang tight, though, Josh. We'll answer that question after the break. We're talking with Josh Kroells. He's the director of the Michigan State High School Clay Target League. He's actually involved at a national level, but I'm bringing this back to Michigan because that's the group I saw shoot last weekend in Lansing at our state high school trap league championship. 1,100 shooters, 60 teams, more than 100,000 rounds, not one problem. It was a wonderful event. I'm very excited to see more about this in the future, to get involved myself, to do a little higher level of sponsorship of our local team. And Josh is the guy to talk with about this. The website, miclaytarget.com, miclaytarget.com. can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK. That's 95.3 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And let's go north of the bridge once again to the Sioux News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by MUCC's On the Ground program. OTG is a program to improve habitat for fish and wildlife across the state. For details, check out the Michigan United Conservation Club's website. That's mucc.org, mucc.org. And you can use the promo code MIKE, all caps, M-I-K-E, to save 25% on signing up to become an MUCC member. We're talking now with Josh Kroells. He's the director of the Michigan State High School Clay Target League, the website miclaytarget.com, miclaytarget.com. Josh, I was watching high schoolers shoot, but you mentioned something before the break about sixth graders?
Yes, our program allows grades 6 through 12. You know, as long as they have their safety certificate, they are good to go. The issue there, I shouldn't say an issue, but it's completely up to the school. Some schools, they only allow 7 through 12, some are 9 through 12. A lot of that is just because of the amount of kids that they have interest for. They just can't handle them all.
So how would someone, if they hear this conversation, think, man, that's a great idea, I'd love to have my local school get involved. How do you start a team?
So, yeah, you can go to miclaytarget.com, and on the right-hand side, there'll be a start a team box. You can fill out that inquiry, and then I would be the one following up with you to get, follow up with the next steps and see what hurdles we got to jump to get through to get your team going at your school.
And so, and what are those hurdles? Number one, you got to get the buy-in of the school, right?
Yep. So a lot of people have a meeting, check out, see what type of interest they have with kids in the area, and then they'll go to the school. It depends on the school. Some go to school athletic director, some go to principal, some go to superintendent, or they just go right to the school board. And then they just have the amount of kids that are interested and find a local gun club that will be willing to host all the athletes and, get that approval letter signed off by administration from your school, and away we go.
Do you find that the northern, more rural schools, it's easier to get this done? Or do you see, like in Michigan here, southern, more metro schools also involved, metropolitan schools?
Yeah, it varies across the country. Another spot to look at how we're really spread out in Michigan, for example, would just be to go to MI Clay Target, and then at the top there's a banner that says teams. If you click on that, it'll be a Google map across the whole state. And there's a spot where there's obviously a lot we can fill in yet, but they are very, very scattered across the entire state. So it's not like you don't have to go, 500 miles to find another team. They are spread out everywhere. But there's a lot of spots in the middle where we have teams with nothing yet. So we're growing,
I hadn't clicked on this before. That's actually a very impressive map. Good for you guys. You're doing a great job. So the kids here in Michigan, last weekend, they shot at the state level. I know you just finished up a similar but bigger event there in Minnesota. What's next? Is there actually a national competition?
Yes. So we'll be actually out in Mason again here right after the 4th for our national championship. And that's the best of the best in the country. So we will take the top 1,800 individuals in the country, and they are going to be coming to Mason, Michigan for that shoot, and then to have 240 teams. And so July 6th and 7th is practice. Let's see here, found a blank here on the dates. So July 8th would be the team competition. July 9th would be individual. And then the qualifier day would be July 10th.
So the national championship is actually back here in Michigan.
Correct. Yep. So we've been in Michigan for this, I believe this is our 4th year now. So we've been in Michigan. You guys have a nice facility there, well ran, as you probably could tell when you were there last weekend. It works out very well. You got great folks. We get good support with Jeff Russell and the rest of the MTA, and the Lansing folks have been great too, working with them.
Yeah, I had never been to that Mason facility. It's beautiful, and it's huge.
Yeah, 43 trap fields.
Wow. And, we didn't even use them all last weekend. Will you use them all for the national championship?
Yep, we'll have them all going. That's, in Minnesota, our largest facility is 20 trap fields, so there's a reason why we had to move it, because we just don't have the size in Minnesota.
Is this open to the public, Josh? If somebody wanted to see what this is like, can they just swing by, or do they have to have an affiliation with a team?
Nope. We have people that will come in and check things out, and we'll be doing just different interviews and people checking out, looking at trying to get a program to start at their school, and they just want to see what it's about. I mean, that will be a full grounds. So when you were there last week, Mike, it was, I encourage you to come back because it's really full. That campground is packed full, and it's a sight to see from, when you're in there.
It's very cool. Josh, congrats on what you guys are doing. Again, this is my first exposure to it. I'm excited about it. I think what you guys are doing is wonderful, and putting the shooting sports in a positive light, and encouraging these kids who may not be, as you say, star baseball players or basketball players, but they still want to do something associated with the school. I think it's a great option. The website, miclaytarget.com, miclaytarget.com. Josh Kroells, thanks for your time. Good luck with the upcoming shoots, and I'm sure you and I will talk again soon.
Yes, thank you very much, and thanks for having me. It's folks like you that help grow the program.
Well, it's my pleasure. miclaytarget.com, and it's families who get involved and the young shooters who get involved that really help grow this concept. I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's pretty cool. You got 1,000 shooters, 1,100 shooters shooting more than 100,000 rounds last weekend, and nothing bad happened. I think that says a lot. In fact, I'm going to follow up on that a little bit for the Ask Avery segment. I'm going to switch the format a little bit here in the end of the second hour. But we'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll wrap up this first hour with Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Sandusky on WMIC 660 AM, 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Port Huron on WPHM 1380 AM, and north of the bridge in Newberry on WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan tracker and Angler Quest headquarters. You know I love that. Linwood Beach is a beautiful facility in a beautiful area on a beautiful part of Saginaw Bay. They are great people, very customer service oriented, have a great launch, and I would encourage you, if you're looking for a place to fish on Saginaw Bay, check them out, linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. I want to turn our attention now to Michigan's premier outdoor publication, in my opinion, Woods-n-Waternews, woods-n-waternews.com. Tom Campbell, one of the reasons for that, and he's with us on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Tom, welcome back. How are you?
Just great, Mike. How about yourself?
Well, I'm doing great. It's hard to believe that July is just around the corner, which makes me think there must be a July edition of the magazine, a July issue out there.
Absolutely, Mike. You betcha. We just finished it up, and we've the subscriptions are in the mail as of Monday, and we're hard into our distribution throughout the state. So look for that July 2022. It's got a beautiful underwater brook trout photo on the cover. It really looks stunning. So hopefully it'll stick out and people will want to buy that issue. It's loaded with great information, that's for sure.
Well, they always are loaded with great information, but you bring up an interesting point here. The cover is critical, isn't it? Because that, if you're not a subscriber, that's what gets people's attention on the newsstand.
Absolutely, Mike. Yep, that is so true. It's one of the toughest things to do when we're off deer season, because obviously when we get to deer season, it's pretty much a no-brainer. You look for the nice big bucks, but it's always a challenge trying to pick that cover photo and trying to pick the right thing, the right photo at the right time, and it's got to be eye appealing and catch those people's eye as they walk by that newsstand in their favorite distribution area. Yeah, you bet.
So what is the process like for determining not only the cover photo but the articles that are in? Are there a bunch of you who sit around a table and hash this out? How does this work, Tom?
Well, everything but a bunch of it. Kind of like you, Mike. You know how things get done there too.
Yep.
We do go. The cover is we'll break it down into what we think are some of the best, and we'll pass it around to everybody in the office and get their opinion on it, and then I go back to what I like. But no, I'm just kidding.
And then I do what I want.
And I do what I want. How that goes. No, and then we make adjustments based on that. But yeah, most of the editorial is pretty much determined. It's kind of determined early by the season and what's going on in the state of Michigan, of course, and we pretty much just lay it all out and see what's going to fit and come up with an idea of how we want to go and what's our theme. We kind of set up themes or editorial goals for each month and make sure we try to hit that criteria every time. And after 30 some years, it's not as complicated as it sounds.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that completely. But I bet people would be surprised. I mean, they look at Woods-n-Waternews, Michigan's biggest and, in my opinion, premier outdoor publication. They probably think you got a staff of 50 people. Well, I suspect that's not the case.
It's exactly right, Mike. Yeah, it's a small office, small staff. It's not anything elaborate at all. But all our good people, all the writers are all freelancers. They work from their home. They work out of their own home office, and just provide us with some of the best copy and best stories that we can get. And we're truly grateful for that. It's fantastic because they do a great job.
Well, and in addition to this monthly magazine, you've got a little thing called the Outdoor Show coming up here, right? Not too far down the road now.
We do, Mike. You're so right. Yeah, it's and it's looking great. We're really pleased. There's some of the changes they've made at the fairgrounds have opened up more space. So, we have if any of your listeners out there are interested, there still is vendor space available. And best thing to do is get a hold of us. Go to our website. There's a special tab for the outdoor weekend. There's even a special website, outdoorweekend.net, that they can go to. And get in touch with us, and we'll work out a plan for them, and hopefully we can get them into the outdoor weekend of September 9th, 10th, and 11th at the Eastern Michigan Fairgrounds in Emily City.
Man, I know you did it a long time ago, and I know it was intentional, but you are geniuses for locking in that first full weekend after Labor Day. I'm involved in several projects, people, trying to put on shows or whatever. And they look for that perfect weekend, and I say, forget about it. The perfect weekend has already been locked in. Don't compete with it. Just go along with it and pick another time.
So right, that was I almost want to say was luck, but we kind of floated there a couple first years of middle or late, and once we locked in, you're right, it was the best thing we've done, and the show just keeps growing, and it's just a fun event to go to. It's not high pressured. It's just a fun family outing, and we hope everybody can make it this year. And
we'll be talking a lot more about that as it gets closer. Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews, the website woods-n-waternews.com, woods-n-waternews.com. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, we're heading to Lake Superior, the middle of Lake Superior, to Stannard Rock, lake trout fishing with Dave Kimar of Kymar's Charters. That's in hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network, heard on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. Yes, this is, first and foremost, a radio show. And I say that to kind of distinguish the show from a lot of the other outdoor content that's out there. I mean, there are a lot of outdoor podcasts. Very, very good outdoor podcasts. And I'm proud that I'm also part of the podcast world as well. But this is, first and foremost, an outdoor radio show. A syndicated, Michigan-based outdoor radio show. And I think the best way to listen, if you can, is on your local AM or FM station, because you get your local news and weather and sports, even your local commercials. Maybe there's a sale you want to take advantage of. Plus, the radio stations get the content before the podcast version of the show is uploaded. I never use the term dropped. I don't know what this is. Well, the podcast is dropped. Podcasts don't drop. Podcasts get uploaded, and then you can download it, but they don't get dropped. I don't get that. Anyway, I digress. I think the best way to listen, if you can, is on your local AM or FM station. But if you can't, if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, or if your local station doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, isn't it nice to know there is a podcast version that gets uploaded so you can download it? And where is that? You can hear it on the website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. You can hear it on my Facebook page. Oh, my goodness. Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, anywhere that you can hear a podcast, you can hear the Outdoor Magazine podcast. I even put a version on YouTube, and people watch it / listen to it on YouTube every week. As long as we're talking about podcasting, a blatant promotion, I do podcasts each month for Offshore Tackle, Angler Quest boats, Primal Tree Stands, and Polar Craft boats as well. So keep an ear out for those. I would appreciate it. You know, the beginning of the show here, Ken Hunter says Avery's been talking about the outdoors here in Michigan for more than 4 decades. Isn't that, I mean, to me, that's a blessing, and it's been wonderful. And I've had a chance to do so many cool and interesting things. And when I think about outdoor adventures here in Michigan, I believe the ultimate freshwater fishing adventure is to go to Stannard Rock in the middle of Lake Superior and fish for lake trout. I've only done it a couple of times. Dave Kimar of Kimar's Charters has been doing it. Well, he was one of the guys who pioneered it. He was one of the first guys to venture out to Stannard Rock, and he's still doing it today. In fact, the last couple of weeks when I've tried to get him on the show, he said, Mike, I can't do it because I'm going to be on the water. Well, I found a week when he had a little time off, and he has graciously agreed to talk with us, and he's now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Dave, welcome back. How are you?
Good morning, Mike. I'm doing well.
Well, listen, it was a real pleasure after talking with you on the air several times to finally meet face to face there in Escanaba a few months ago.
Yeah, back in March we had a face to face meeting finally.
Yeah, and it was good to see you. You look like a fisherman, Dave.
Well, I'm getting where I look like an old fart now, but that's just the way it goes.
Hey, we're both still upright. That's all that counts, right?
Yep, that's for sure.
Hey, listen, tell me about your operation, KimarsCharters.com, but it's much more than that. You've got a place right there. You've got a resort right there on the water. Tell me how this all started.
Well, my parents started that in 1943. My dad and my uncle were fishermen. They took charters out. Of course, in those days, nobody went to Stannard Rock from here or anywhere on a regular basis. I started fishing in '67 and started going to Stannard Rock in '78. When we finally had enough fuel capacity on a boat, you got to have a good 100-gallon capacity if you're hauling a crew out there.
So that's what it is. You had to have the right boat, Dave, to get out there?
Yeah, and fuel capacity is a big thing because you're going near 50 miles time you wiggle back and forth and run around one way. So you got a 100-mile trip, and a larger boat gets roughly 1 mile per gallon on the water. So
it's
a critical thing.
So Did everybody know about Stannard Rock? They knew about the fishing out there. Was it kind of a myth? Was it kind of a legend? What was that like?
Well, there was people going back there way back when they rowed. They would take a large boat out there and launch rowboats, and they'd fish out of rowboats for the fish. There's accounts of that in the historical museum here about that kind of fishing out there. And then guys started going there. Sometimes they took net boats out there and fished out the doors, and then guys started going on their own, and really nobody was chartering there on a regular basis, and then I started doing that in '78.
Well, those first few trips especially must have been, I don't know, an adventure, maybe even a little exciting, maybe a little nerve-wracking even.
Well, yeah, we went by compass and time. We didn't have, of course, the GPS wasn't even around, and we didn't have Loran on the boat, so we went by compass and time. So it was a little nerve-wracking. But once you see that 102-foot tall lighthouse poking out of the water, then, you know, it's kind of a thrill, and then you look for that. You know, on a decent day, you can see it for a distance.
Our younger listeners aren't even going to know what compass and time is. You had a compass bearing, and you based it on the time you were running. But, Dave, if you missed that, and not by very much, you could take a long, long boat ride.
Yeah, we didn't ever get lost. We had a couple times where in the fog we had to search around a little bit, but we did always find the lighthouse. But there are times when, you know, it made it a little confusing for you. Heading out on the right compass course was critical.
And what do you find once you get out there? What's there?
Well, the rock itself is not very large. One lady I took out asked where the big island was, and I said, "There's that rock. It's, you know, bigger than a couple kitchen tables. That's about it." And then there's, of course, a large lighthouse. The rock sticks out of the water a little bit, and the lighthouse is maybe half a mile away from it.
And that lighthouse was out there for a navigation purpose, right? To keep freighters from running aground up on the rocks? Yeah,
it was built in the 1880s. This is when the iron ore business became really big. And, of course, Captain Stannard, supposedly the first one to see the rock, reported it. And the government built a lighthouse so that they could, you know, warn ships of that obstruction. Where you're out in open water, all of a sudden there's a rock sticking out of the water, and there's some submerged reefs there. It was quite a task at the time they built the lighthouse. It was actually one of the construction feats. It was a multi-year project.
And I hear stories about the early days, about the folks who manned that station. That was quite an ordeal too.
I'm sure I talked to a couple lighthouse keepers over the years, and one of them said that this is many years ago. He said in a big storm, the whole lighthouse would shudder sometimes when a big wave hit it.
Wow!
But it's still standing.
It's still.
But I'm sure it makes you think about it.
Is it functional? Is there still a light out of it?
It's no longer run by the Coast Guard. The Market Superior Watershed now owns it. Coast Guard, you know, sold off the lighthouses and that. Last I know, there is the light which is automated and runs on batteries. Last I know, that was functioning. I haven't been there in the dark, so I'm not exactly positive of that.
Yeah, I would imagine it's not a trip you want to make in the dark, Dave.
Well, sometimes we leave early in the morning. We get there when it's a little bit dark, but yeah, that's, you know, it's a lot of running in open water in the dark.
So to justify a trip like that, I mean, I know because I've been out there, but I would have to assume if I hadn't been out there, to justify a trip like that, the fishing's got to be pretty darn good once you get there.
It is usually, but remember, people have to remember that fishing is fishing, and actually this year with the cold water, there have been a few slower days out there because water was only 37 last time we were there.
Wow.
So, you know, they're not going to actually jump in the boat like some people think they are. But the potential for catching fish on light tackle, whether it's jigging or casting small spoons and drifting, is there. Potentially catch a large fish or a medium or small fish on light gear is what the draw of Stannard Rock is, basically.
Well, was there a time, I know they never literally jumped in the boat, but was there a time you could go out there? I mean, I guess my question is, how is the fishing now compared to those early days when you first started out there, Dave?
There's no doubt that it's slacked off some. You know, it's a 5 mile long reef, and you know, it gets hit. You know, the thing that's happened is with GPS, it's easier for almost anybody to go there with the right boat. So you've got more traffic out there, and we're still having a liberal fish limit here of 5. So I'm not so sure if we're running low on fish or there's other factors or what it is, but fishing is still good, but I wouldn't say that, you know, it's quite what it was multiple years ago.
Hang tight, Dave. We got to take a... Well, hang tight, Dave. I'll follow up on that after the break. We're talking to Dave Kymar of Kymar's Charters. His website, Kymar'sCharters.com. That's Kymar with a K, Kymar'sCharters.com. Dave has been running lake trout charters out there for a long, long time, and a lot of people are running them out there now. It's still an adventure. We'll find out what it's like, how to catch those fish, and what you could expect after the break from Dave Kymar of Kymar's Charters, Kymar'sCharters.com, right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the show all across our great state of Michigan, including Caro, WKYO, and WIDL. That's 1360 AM, 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ, 1090 AM. And let's go north of the bridge. Let's go to Escanaba, the Riviera of the North. WCHT AM and FM, 600 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning, it's a very impressive company. They've been in the archery industry since, I think 1946 now. When Roland Boning, I never know if it's Roland or Roland. I've heard it pronounced both ways, so I apologize. But Mr. Boning, there we go. When Mr. Boning himself invented Ferrule-Tite to glue broadheads to what at the time were obviously wooden arrow shafts. These days, Boning continues to innovate, come up with new products, new manufacturing processes. They continue to be a leader in the archery industry, and they're right here in Michigan, in Lake City, Michigan. Check them out online at boning.com. That's BOHNING, boning.com. While you are online, if you're poking around, check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. But be sure to head over to Kymar'sCharters.com. That's Kymar with a K, K-I-M-A-R-S, Kymar'sCharters.com. That's the website for Dave Kymar and family. Dave, your family has a strong history, a strong tradition there. Tell me about the resort, your facilities right there on the water, too.
Well, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom cottages available. They're right on the lake. Well, it's a short distance to the lake from the cottage, but we have 300 feet of frontage on the lake where our docks and boats and the beach are, so it's all right there. How's your water level this year? It's back to some kind of an average. It's not real high and not real low, so it's dropped some from what it was a couple of years ago when it was real high.
It just amazes me, though. I mean, how much water is out there and how seemingly fast those levels can go up and down. It's like mind-boggling how kind of a volume we're talking about.
It is surprising. I mean, sometimes it doesn't make any sense. You have a record high, and within a short time, it's gone down to a normal or below. It does kind of make you think.
So, do you keep the boats? You keep the boats right out there in front of the resort?
Yeah, we have docks on wheels that we put in for the summer and pull them out in the winter, and so we're right there in front of the resort.
So it's lake trout that is the draw, right? I mean, you're not getting salmon out there around the rock. It's almost all Lakers?
Yeah, it's 99%. Occasionally we get a nice big steelhead, pretty rare, but every once in a while a few salmon will go by and you get a couple of those, but that's pretty rare too. But it's 99% lake trout.
And how are you fishing for them, Dave?
Well, when the water's cold like this, they're in the deep water, and you're using jigs and drifting with jigs, and a jig from anywhere from a 1 ounce jig to sometimes a 4 or 5 ounce jig, depending on how much wind you got for your drift. Once the water warms up a little bit, get some of that optimum temperature for lake trout of 45 to 55. They'll move in the shallower water right around the lighthouse, and then lots of times we'll just go in and cast spoons, like little Cleos, KO wobblers. Once again, we're drifting and casting spoons.
When you're jigging them in the deeper water now, are you tipping those with some kind of live bait? Are you using plastic or what?
We can use we'll use a flutter tail on there, or live bait wouldn't stay live, but we could use a chunk of sucker belly or something like that. Just something that enhances the smell. Yeah. Sometimes they hit better without anything on there, just a jig.
Do you troll for them at all?
Only if the fish are one of those days when they're very uncooperative, and that's our last resort. Occasionally we'll do that. Some days the fish just are obstinate, and it makes it kind of tough to get what you want to get.
Yeah, so I do know, but you can troll for lake trout anywhere in the state. I would think that one of the appeals of coming up there with you guys is to have that rod in your hand when a fish hits. There's nothing else like that.
No, that's our main focus. I mean, we're not into the trolling aspect of it. That's only in desperation when the fish aren't ready for us. But it's fishing. People forget that fishing is fishing.
Yeah, and you guys have the reputation has been built up for so many years that it's such a fantastic fishery. Yeah, I bet when your clients come to that dock, they've got a raised level of expectation that captains across the rest of the state they don't have to deal with. Hey, I'm going to Stannard Rock. I'm going to catch myself the fish of a lifetime, and Dave Kimar and his guys are going to make that happen for me today.
That's sometimes the expectation, and that's what we have to deal with and do the best we can.
But you're over the years, though, Dave. I mean, you guys have put up a pretty impressive resume.
We have caught a lot of fish, and we've had some real good luck. There have been those days that were slower, of course, but we've had good luck over the years. Yes.
So, what's an average trip look like these days, this time of year? Is it a multiple fish day? Is it a big fish day, or does it absolutely vary from day to day?
Well, the potential for a big fish there is all the time. You don't get a big fish every day. Some days you get multiple big fish in one day. Some days you don't get any big fish. It just seems like, what is active at the time and what's around for what you're catching. We have multiple spots we move to, and, you hit one spot and you move on somewhere else to see what's there, so you keep trying for a spot where it could be one of those big lunkers.
And what is a big fish these days, Dave?
Oh, you want to get something in the 25 to 30 pound class.
Yeah. That's a big fish, that's for sure.
Yeah, we had one out there the other day was 40 inches long and 29 and a half.
Wow.
But we try and release some of those if the customer doesn't mind, and if they look like they're a spawner or something like that, we'll definitely try and put them back.
Because that's all natural. That's all natural reproduction out there, isn't it?
Definitely. The Stannard Rock trout is a kind of a subspecies. In fact, the DNR set a net out there once. They wanted to get some of the eggs in the fall and use them in their hatcheries because they seem to grow a little faster and maybe a little bigger. I don't know how that all worked out. I think they lost the net in the storm. I'm not sure. I shouldn't say anything because you'd have to talk to somebody from the department.
Yeah, I got you. Hey, is it when you're casting up on these rocky reefs, the water's so clear out there? Are you actually sight fishing these fish? Do you see them?
Oh, you can see them more often. You see them chasing your lure, and sometimes you'll have 4 or 5 of them chasing your lure. And sometimes it's frustrating to see them chase it and not bite on it. But if you can see them really good and it's really calm, sometimes that's the days when they're kind of they don't bite as much. You can see them, they can see you. You've been brook trout fishing, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I've always thought about that. Walleye fishing down here on the bay, sometimes you get a crystal clear day in shallow water. I'm thinking, if I can see these fish, they can see me. Exactly what you're saying, and that does that's got to hamper things a little bit.
Sometimes it does.
Dave, when you get days when it's maybe too rough or whatever to get out there on the rock, are there options? There's got to be other places that you can take your clients?
We can fish right out of Shelter Bay. We only got 2.5 miles to go to the Shelter Bay Flats. So we can fish that. Or if the wind is in the right direction, we go out to the Big Reef, which is off of Munising, off the Pitchard Rocks. That's about 25 miles. There's some nice big fish out there, too, but that's pretty much all trolling on both those situations.
So can you get out most days? Is there an option? If we make the trip up there to fish with you, are we going to be able, a good chance we can get on the water for something most days?
Yeah, I'd probably 75, 80%. This year has been kind of a windy year for us. We lost a lot of trips this year, so it's hard to say. We're probably below par this year on getting out.
When is the peak time? What's the best time? Midsummer? Is that what you're looking at?
I like that time when they're in the shallows, which is somewhere around that mid to late July, which, again, depends on water temperature. And, who knows what's going to warm up to that point. It's all speculation. Over the years, though, it's been somewhere in that mid to late July period. And
how late in the season do you usually fish?
Well, as the fall comes, you get more wind. You get those northerly fronts come through, and the northwest wind likes to prevail here on Lake Superior. But last year we lucked out. We had 3 trips in a row in October, which is unheard of. And actually the fishing was fantastic. My son-in-law Rick would ran those, and they did extremely well. They had lots of nice fish that some were released that were spawners.
How many boats are you running these days, Dave?
We got 2 that we go to rock with regularly, and we're in the process of fixing up a 270 Hughes Alaskan, which is a brand new one we're going to set up for going out there with a pair of 250s on it.
Good for you. Good for you. So you're not ready to call it quits just yet, are you?
No, I want to be on the water when I'm in my 80s, I hope. So I'm still thinking of that. Yeah. That's a potential.
Well, and I am confident that is going to happen. I love talking with you about fishing and just the area in general, because you got such a history and tradition in that part of the state, and your family's been there for a long time, and you've done a lot to promote the fishery and the tourism in that part of the state, and so I think a lot of people owe you a lot of a debt of gratitude.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, but I think we all owe it to the lake and the fish.
Well, very, very well said, Dave. On that note, I'll let you go. I know you got a lot going on, but always good talking to you. I'll send people to the website KymarsCharters.com. That's Kymar's KIMARS, KymarsCharters.com. If you want to fish Stannard Rock, why not fish it? There are options. There are several captains who run out there, but if you're going to fish the rock, why not go out there with people who have been doing it for decades and now for generations, and Dave Kymar and family are some of the best out there. KymarsCharters.com, KIMARS, KymarsCharters.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll talk with Casey Reitz of the DNR. We've been talking about wildlife rehabilitating and not picking up fawns because you're not a licensed rehabilitator, right? At least the odds are you're not. But there is a process for doing that. Why would you want to? Who should do it? And what does it allow you to do? We'll talk about that. And then we'll follow it up and wrap up this week's hour number 2 with the Ask Avery segment. That's all coming up yet this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY. That's 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain on WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Brenton USA Hunting Rifles. AR style, highly accurate, tough, and dependable hunting rifles that could change the way you hunt. They're made in Lansing, just down the road from the governor's office, which I get a kick out of. Check them out. And by the way, I picked up 2 weeks ago now my AR 350 Brenton USA hunting rifle. I have not had a chance to sight it in yet. I will do that once the fishing season slows down, but I am very excited about it. It is a beautiful piece of gear, and I'm very excited to be working with Brenton and checking out that 350. You can check them out online at BrentonUSA.com. That's BRENTON, BrentonUSA.com. I want to turn our attention now to Casey Wrights from the DNR. A few weeks ago, we were talking about not picking up, for example, whitetail fawns because you're probably not a licensed wildlife rehabilitator, and it's illegal illegal to do so if you're not. But there is a process for becoming licensed, and Casey knows that very well. Casey, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So tell me about this process. Is it hard, and is it something people should think about doing, or is this for a specific type of individual?
I would say it's for a specific type of individual. Wildlife rehabilitation really is something that a person has to be able to dedicate lots of time to. It's not one of those things that you can just jump into. You really have to know the animals in which you're planning to care for. So there's a lot of education that goes along with wildlife rehabilitation and the animals in particular you plan to rehabilitate.
I would imagine it's training, it's knowledge. Facilities have to be a factor as well.
Exactly. To become a wildlife rehabilitator in Michigan, you first have to take the International Wildlife Rehab Council's beginning basic course. This course really covers all the basics on what you really need to know. But in addition to that, you have to have a licensed veterinarian or another wildlife rehabilitator that's willing to work with you or be an advisor to you as you're getting started with rehabilitation. And then the Michigan DNR conservation officers will do an inspection of the facilities prior to ever issuing a permit, just to make sure that they have adequate facilities for the animals they're going to be rehabilitating.
Wow, this is a pretty involved process.
It does take several months to become a wildlife rehabilitator.
And it takes several months, very involved, licensing, but I think that's the way it has to be, right? You can't have somebody who just has an interest or a fondness or a love for wildlife doing this because basically they just might not be qualified. They might not be able to do it even though they would want to.
Correct. And, every animal is different, and every animal requires different care. So it's really important that when a person becomes a wildlife rehabilitator, the species in which they're going to rehabilitate, they know exactly how to care for them, what they should feed them, the things that won't upset their stomach. A common misconception amongst the public is that any animal can have cow's milk. Well, that's just not true, especially with wild animals, and it could be deadly to them. So it's really important that rehabilitators know exactly how to care for the species in which they are going to rehabilitate.
So is the license for a specific species, or is it more broad-based?
It depends. It can be specific. Like, there's several people in the state of Michigan that will only rehabilitate fawns. There's also people that will only rehabilitate squirrels. So it depends, but then we have larger facilities in the state of Michigan that would really rehabilitate just about everything. So it just depends. And they have to have specific facilities for each one of those animals and care and treatment plans. So it is quite detailed.
Casey, real quick, because we're going to run out of time here. So what then happens, say in the case of a fawn, to a rehabilitated fawn? Are they actually put back in the wild then, or where do they go?
Absolutely. In any case where an animal goes into rehab, the ultimate goal is to release those animals into the wild as soon as they're able to fend for themselves.
How successful is it? I mean, every animal is not going to make it back into the wild, I would suspect.
Right. And, that's up to the rehabilitator to make that determination on whether or not humane euthanasia is the right course to be taken. But the ultimate goal is, one, to not make them suffer, and if they can be rehabilitated, return them back to the wild.
Yeah, euthanasia. Okay, I get it now. So that is an option. Casey, real quick, how would somebody apply or try to become a licensed rehabilitator?
Well, you first should go to our website at michigan.gov/wildlife permits. We have a very awesome podcast that talks all about wildlife rehabilitation. There's several guidance documents, but then ultimately you would end up with me, and then I will provide guidance on how to start the process.
Casey writes, you've been a wealth of information. I appreciate your time. I'll send people to two websites, michigan.gov/DNR and michigan.gov/wildlife permits. And we appreciate your time again, Casey. We'll talk again.
All right. Appreciate you too. Take care.
All right. Casey writes of the DNR two websites, michigan.gov/DNR for the general website, and specifically for wildlife rehabilitation, michigan.gov/wildlife permits. We'll take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll wrap up this second hour with this week's Ask Avery segment. I think I'm going to break format a little bit and just follow up on something covered in the first hour of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. And you can hear us in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by our friends from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. The way the Ask Avery segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content, the programming of the show. You can send me a question you'd like me to answer directly or to pass along to somebody else, say in the MUCC or DNR. Best way to get those questions to me is via email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. I've had people send them through the many different social media messaging platforms, and to be honest with you, that gets a little bit confusing, and I'll read something and where did I hear that? But if you send it to me in an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, in the subject line put Ask Avery, that way it will be sure to get to me, and I will certainly do my best to address it. Kind of a changing situation here. The show is in a fluid mode. I was going to take one direction, but I just got the answer to something that people have been asking me about, so we're going to stick with that. And because this happened here at the last minute, I can't thank one particular listener, but I've had several people say, hey, what's going on with the alewife die-off on Lake Michigan here? We hear reports of alewife die-offs. I didn't know anything about it. I just got a news release from the DNR. A little background here. Alewife, well, let me read the news release, then I'll get onto it. Lake Michigan experiencing seasonal alewife die-off. And I'm going to read this, and it's going to be a little bit wordy, but it's written as a print release. Alewife are small prey fish that reach 2 to 9 inches in length. They are experiencing seasonal die-off in Lake Michigan, an event that frequently occurred 20 to 60 years ago, but has been rare in recent times. Not native to the Great Lakes, alewives migrated from the Atlantic Ocean into the lakes through the Welland Canal in the 1920s. Alewives spend most of their time in deep, cold waters. In the spring and summer, they migrate to near-shore areas to spawn and search for food. Some alewives come out of winter in a weakened state and don't tolerate changing conditions such as large temperature swings. The combination of poor overwinter conditions, temperature changes, and spawning stress cause the die-off. The die-off is larger than normal this year and something we have not seen in years, says Jay Wesley, Lake Michigan Basin Coordinator for the Michigan DNR. We are seeing the die-off extend from Muskegon all the way up to Cross Village and out to the Beaver Island complex. The DNR is fully aware of the situation and believes this is a natural event and not caused by pollution or disease. Both state and federal agencies annually collect alewives to examine yada, 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 yada. Okay, so the gist of it is, and this is pretty interesting, we have enough alewives in the system this year again to have a die-off. And now let's go back to a historic perspective here. The reason that salmon were brought to the Great Lakes in the first place was to control the alewife population. Because back in the 60s, there were alewife die-offs that would wash up on the beach in numbers so large that they had to be removed because they were a health hazard and they smelled terrible. We had so many alewives, which is a bait fish, in the Great Lakes, specifically Lake Michigan, that the DNR said, what can we do about this? Let's bring in salmon from the West Coast, and they'll eat those fish. And look what happened. They created this tremendous recreational fishery. It did knock down the alewife population, and we didn't get the die-offs. But then things swung so far the other way that we didn't have enough bait fish in the system. The salmon were small. They weren't growing right. They weren't growing well, to the point where the DNR a few years ago cut back on their salmon plants because they said there's not enough bait fish out there to support the population. The last couple of years, I have been hearing from Lake Michigan salmon fishermen, they're seeing huge cloud of bait fish, bait balls, specifically alewives. We suspect they're alewives, and now we kind of know that they are. So isn't it interesting how cycles will change, how Mother Nature will adapt to what we do? And now the alewife population is big enough on Lake Michigan where we actually have die-offs, and they're washing up on the beach. So there's kind of a real quick down and dirty answer to the people who have emailed me and said, what's going on with the Alewife die-off? Is it true? I'm hearing about it on certain parts of the lake. Yes, it is true. The DNR just now, as I'm in the studio, sent out a news release on it. But if you live on Lake Michigan or near Lake Michigan in the northern part of the lake, you already know this because you've seen it with your own eyes. If you have a question for me that you would like to see answered on the Ask Avery segment, again, either directly from me, something relating to or relying on my experience in the outdoors over the years, or something you would like me to pass along to a bona fide expert who has knowledge in such areas, send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. Put in the subject line, Ask Avery. Ask me your question, and we will see if we can't get it answered here on the show. I will promise you I will look into it. Thanks again to our friends at Security Credit Union for making the Ask Avery segment possible each week. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in our third and final hour this week, Nick DeShano, the guy at the helm of offshore tackle these days. We'll talk about that Michigan-based family-owned company that everybody who trolls uses their products. And then we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar. That's in the final hour this week of Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Yes, indeed. This is the guy, big guy, Mike Avery, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. 33 AM and FM stations across the great state of Michigan, talking about hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping and wildlife issues and conservation issues, even some wild game cooking. And I am blessed to be able to do this. I am blessed that I grew up here in this great state of Michigan, that I've spent my career here in Michigan, a place with so many different outdoor recreational opportunities. If I would have, obviously I had no choice in no say in where I was born. And not to disparage any other state, but what if I'd been born in a state like, I don't know, New Jersey, where the outdoors just isn't so pervasive and part of our history and tradition? Would I have been able to do what I am, what I've been able to do? Probably not. But I was fortunate to be born here in Michigan, to be raised in a hunting and fishing family, to be brought up in part of our state, West Michigan, beautiful rolling hills, farms, fields, woodlots, lakes, creeks. I know it's creeks, but I'm going to say creek. And to be involved in this outdoor lifestyle. And then to be able to make a career out of it. It's been a great ride. It's not over yet. I mean, I don't think it is. Only God knows if it is. But if it's up to me, people say, Avery, you're getting kind of old now. In fact, I have a birthday next week. When are you going to retire? Why would I retire? People like us, we talk about, when we're not hunting or fishing, we talk about hunting and fishing. And for me, that's my job these days. You know, to spend as much time on the water or in the woods as I can when I'm not, to talk about it. It's kind of a dream come true, right? So no, as long as I can put words together, and some weeks are harder than others, but as long as I can still string thoughts together and get the words out of my mouth, I'm not going to retire. Lately, when I'm not here in the studio, most of my time has been spent on the water. I've been fishing a lot out on my beloved home water of Saginaw Bay, out on that angler quest that I love so much, Michigan-made products, using Michigan-made Angler Quest products. If I'm fishing, offshore products. If I'm fishing, I'm going to have products from offshore on the Angler Quest. I love, my go-to board is the OR12 for getting the baits out to the side. I really like the Magnum tadpoles for bouncing spoons off the bottom. That's been a very effective technique for me this summer. I don't use a fraction of the offshore products that are out there. But I've been using offshore for a long, long time. Bruce DeShano, chairman of the boards, is the guy who started Offshore Tackle. He's now in the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, given the title chairman of the boards by the In-Fisherman years and years ago. Well, these days, Bruce has kind of stepped aside a little bit. He's still involved, but he's not running things day to day. His son, Nick DeShano, is the guy running the company these days. I have known Nick literally since he was a kid. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line to talk about a little bit about trolling and about offshore and how to help you catch more fish. Nick, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Good talking with you. And I say crick, too, so you don't have to feel bad.
Hey, listen, I know it's poplar, not popple, but I say popple. I know it's creek, but I say crick, and that's just the way it's going to be.
That's right.
But I do say offshore, and I say it a lot. And I'm so proud to be able to work with you guys. Because you've built up such a strong company and such a strong presence. I mean, they call you guys the leaders in trolling technology, and there's a reason for that, Nick.
Yeah, well, a big reason of that is you. The people that we work with. Like I said, we've worked about as long as we've been a company. We've been working together, and it's been great being able to do that. And that's just, having the right partners in the business is. It makes it all better, and especially having good people that you want to hang out with and you love spending good time with, that makes it all that much better.
How has the company changed? How has it evolved since your dad started it, maybe 40 years ago now?
Yeah, about 40 years ago. I mean, it started out with when he was a charter captain, making the original products for our downrigger releases. And then about 93 is when we were early 91, I think it was, we started developing the planer board when the walleye game started going big. PWT guys, there just wasn't enough options for what they really wanted to do. The boards out there were okay, but they thought they wanted to be able to perform better. So got a hold of Mark Romanek and Gary Parsons and Keith Cabayas and a few of the other guys. Got with Dad, and they started developing and working on the OR-12 that we know today. But yeah, it's changed, but the core company is a lot like what it was. I mean, I grew up as a kid putting parts together in our basement and gluing pads on releases, and I remember bagging releases and stuff like that. And even today, with everything, we're still scrambling to catch up. We're sitting in, and you can come down into our basement at night, and you'll probably see maybe myself and my son working on stuff together, putting parts together. Still, it's just and especially these last couple of years have been so crazy. But it's still pretty small company. People think we're a lot bigger company than we are, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's been neat from my standpoint to be able to, see it pretty much the whole company progress and from starting out as just a side project and turning into what it is today. So it's been a lot of fun, and feel very fortunate to be able to be in this business. There's not many businesses that are more fun to be in than the fishing and the outdoor industry. So it's meet some really great people and get to travel to some cool places, and it's really been a lot of fun over the years.
I just lost my train of thought here. And I said I'm not going to retire as long as I don't lose my train of thought, and now I lose my train of thought. So maybe it is time to retire. I don't know. Maybe your dad's got the right idea.
Not for a while.
Well, you talk about being in the industry, being in the business. Now you've also got a marina out there in the Thumb too, don't you?
I do. I took that on. My dad and his partner originally had it back in the late '80s, and it come back around, and then I had an opportunity to buy it in about 2002, I believe it was. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while.
Long time now then.
But I got it just in time for the salmon to crash on Lake Huron.
Oh, good timing there, Nick. That was a good one.
Yeah, but it's worked out all right. We have the docks and camping, but the tackle is all out of the store now. So it's scaled down quite a bit now. So I've been so busy with offshore and taking on that end of it that's it probably for the best overall anyways on it. But no, it's nice, and Harbor Beach is a great little fishing area, and the fishing has been real good this year. A good mixed bag. We've had cohos a lot of coho in the spring. Real good coho bite in the spring, and now there's just guys went out this weekend and they had a mixed bag of 5 different species. There's an Atlantic now and then, and still seeing some cohos around, and this is the year for the pink salmon. So there's a bunch of pink salmon and lake trout, and it's just a good, like I said, it's a good mixed bag. You don't have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you can fish all day long. It's not one of those deals where the bite's done it. As soon as the sun comes up, the fishing's over. So it's a fun place to fish. I mean, the salmon are pretty much, you're not going to see much for salmon after May. But as far as just going out and fishing, and we got walleye here, and it's turned into a pretty decent little fishery. So,
oh, that's great to hear. I'm glad it, and not something that offshore would spend a lot of time on. But I got to believe the smallmouth fishery's got to be phenomenal out there in the rocks.
Yeah, it is. It's just hasn't been touched much over the years, and there's some great smallmouth, and seeing a few more largemouth and that stuff around here too. So it's just we've got such a big harbor that you can spend a whole weekend just fishing in the harbor, casting, and you can get anything from pike to walleye to smallmouth to you name it. I mean, you never know what you're going to get in the harbor.
Yeah, it sounds like a great fishery, Nick. Listen, I got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. I assume you can stick around and talk with me for a little bit longer?
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Nick DeShano, the guy at the helm of Offshore Tackle these days. The website is offshoretackle.com. That's offshoretackle.com. I'm looking at the website right now. It is a very, very good website. A lot of products, as you would expect, but the dive charts are on there. Articles, instruction sheets, a lot of videos. In fact, the podcast is up there too, the monthly Offshore Tackle podcast that we do. By the way, of all the different podcasts that I do and have done, aside from the podcast version of the radio show, the Offshore Tackle podcast is our most popular podcast. And I think that's because Nick does a great job of lining up very interesting guests. I would encourage you to check it out. You can find that at offshoretackle.com. That's offshoretackle.com. offshoretackle.com. When we come back, I want to talk more with Nick. He mentioned the last couple of years have been kind of tough. I know offshore as an American-made product, and most of it in-house. So why is that, and how can we use their products? And I want to see if there's anything more coming down the going to be coming to the market here soon. Sometimes Nick will tell me, sometimes he won't. We'll find out after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC, that's 1450 AM and 99.7 FM. And you can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Versa Skins, Michigan-based, family-owned Versa Skins. When I say those two things, Michigan-based, family-owned. That is my sweet spot. Those are the companies that I love to work with, Michigan-based and family-owned. And Versa Skins is one of those companies. Paul Perrone, company owner, has come up with a great concept. He got thinking, why should you buy different hunting suits for different applications, different seasons? Why not buy one good quality, well-made suit and then snap on and zip on an outer liner that changes the camo pattern? Blaze orange, snow camo, waterfowl, whatever. In probably less than a minute, you can honestly change the skin for the season you're in. Snap them on, zip them on, and change the look. Versaskins.com is the website, versaskins.com. I would encourage you to check them out online and in person when you can, versaskins.com. Same thing with Offshore Tackle. Michigan-based, family-owned. I love that because, I don't know, there's something about being able to sit down and look a person in the eye and shake their hand and have a cup of coffee or a beer or whatever and talk about how things are going to happen. You don't have to go through a marketing company. You don't have to go through an ad agency. I don't like that at all. Nick DeShano is the guy at the helm of Offshore Tackle these days. The company was started by his dad, Bruce, and Nick is doing a wonderful job, and he's with us on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, before the break, you were talking about the last couple of years being a challenge. They have been, obviously, for everybody. I'm a little bit surprised, though, to hear about a company like Offshore, because everything on your board is made here in this country. In fact, I thought you guys made most of it yourselves. So what has the challenge been?
Well, the challenge is it's a good challenge because we just been real busy. The orders and demand and everything has been higher than it ever has. And it's definitely, been a supplier issues. And even though, they're made in the USA and plastics and all that stuff, there's still some components that our suppliers, certain things that they get that could take some time. But for the most part, we've done good. It's just a matter of just trying to catch up and keep up with orders. So it's a good struggle.
I'm
not
right.
complaining whatsoever.
Yeah, that is a good problem.
It's good. And as with any manufacturer now, we've had to kind of change the way we do things because sometimes things you can still get them, but everything is taking a little bit longer to come in. So it's just a matter of adjusting to that and catching up. And we're really getting close to being on, caught up with everything now, and we appreciate everybody's patience. I know there's been some people waiting for stuff, and we're doing everything we can do to get everything out, and we're finally starting to make some headway now. So,
good. I'm glad to hear that.
It's been a challenge, but it's been fun. Like I said, I am not complaining at all.
Nick, when I look at your products, I don't know. I kind of feel, looking at it from the outside, I feel like the OR12 probably your flagship. That's your inline side planter. Now, when I look at the competition, I can go to a store. I can go to Jay's or I can go to someplace like that, and I can buy a board that claims to do the same thing as you guys for actually quite a bit less. Mm-hmm. Why shouldn't I pick that? Why should I spend more for Offshore? Well,
it's whatever you would think for the quality when it comes to the Chinese boards and stuff like that is what you're going to get. And there's so much that goes into the cost of making a product and designing a product and coming up with your own design and your own, just your own methods and your own way of doing stuff that people don't see. And then I understand that, and it's one thing to, spend 5 years developing a planer board and the right releases and the right tension and the springs and the designs and the dimensions and testing it in there and going and doing all that stuff, as opposed to taking a product that already works and sending it over to China and says, we want these in green.
Yeah.
Do they work? Yeah, they work. But it's, like I said, it's like most stuff that's a Chinese copy of the original American-made product. It's not the quality. The quality changes over time, and I like being able to have more control. If we have an issue with a plastics or a rubber or something, we can. A lot of our plastics are shot in Saginaw Bay, right there in Saginaw Bay Plastics, and we just have work with a place down in Washington, Michigan, too. So if we have an issue, I can be at our plastics company and see them shooting the products within 2 hours, no matter where they're at.
Oh, I drive right by their plant on the way to the bay. I should just stop there and pick up boards on the way through.
Yeah, they'd be a little empty, but it's just and I like it's the supporting the American workers. I mean, it's been a crazy couple of years, and with the gas prices and everything going as it is, I mean, I'm hoping I'm wrong, but there's liable to be some tough times ahead, and we got to start. The more we can support our own companies and our own workers, it's going to be the best for everybody. So
yeah, absolutely. And they say that imitation is a form of flattery. Well, listen, the way you guys have been knocked off and imitated over the years, you should be very flattered right now, because a lot of people copy what you have done.
Right. Well, it seems like anybody with the email address and a credit card can be a pseudo manufacturer now. So but it's just the climate. It's like everything else, and all the businesses and every product is the same thing, whether you're making coolers or clothes or whatever it is. There's always going to be there, and we just got to learn that's where it is. As long as we keep making the best product out there and having backing it up with customer service, and now that's we can do our thing, and everybody will be happy.
Well, Nick, I got to tell you, I've got boards that are well over 20 years old, probably 25, maybe 30 years old, and they still hold up. Now, I might have had to tweak them. I might have had to put a new spring or something on them for the tattle flags, but they run just as good today as they did when I bought them. So it did cost me a few more bucks to buy them in the first place. I've been using them 20 years. I've got my money's worth out of those things several times over.
Right. Well, and you can go to on our website. You can get replacement parts for them, whether it's foam, flags, ballast, pretty much every part on that board. You can go to our website and get a replacement part for it. A lot of times our pro staff at different tournaments or, the fishing clubs will have a board repair day, and they'll have repair kits around, and, somebody needs some foam, and we'll give them a new piece of foam and refurbish the board for them. So, yeah, I mean, as long as you don't lose it, put your line behind the pin in the back relief. As long as you don't lose it, the boards will last. They'll far outlast that $10, $12 crankbait you're pulling.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm actually thinking about reconfiguring the way I use my OR12s. Right now, I'm using a snapper release on the front and that red release on the back. But lately, though, I've been fishing with some bigger crews, and I've had a lot of boards out to each side. And I'm thinking, if I could rig that so I could just make that front release pop off, and then the board would drop out of line when I've got, like 6 or 7 lines on a side. There are people who do that, right? What do you run? An orange clip on the front then, or what?
Yep. As long as you're running monofilament line, just run just the stock releases that they come with. And that's how I run my stuff. I don't like, if I'm running braid, then I'll run the snapper release. If I'm running braid and I want it to trip, then I'll put the SAMs on the front. But I like tripping them. We went for the longest time that originally when we had the original boards before our board, everybody tripped the board and brought it in. It would slide down the line, and you'd have to tie a bead in front of the fish. And then with the walleye tour started up and all those guys, and it went for quite a while where you didn't want them to trip. And then we kind of going back to tripping them. And a lot of it, too, is with the rod laws. Before, when you can only run 2 lines, you didn't run as many out to the side. And like you said, the more you run out to the side, it's one thing to clear an inside board. It's another thing to have 3 inside boards you have to clear out when you bring a board in. So then with the smaller fish, a big 8-9 pound walleye, he'll drag that board back pretty good, and it'll come right up the center. But you get a 14-inch walleye on there, he's not dragging that board that far behind the boat. So you're going to have to clear the insides. So I've pretty much gone to tripping all my boards now. And for walleye fishing or anything with monofilament, yeah, I'm running the orange release on the front and the red one on the back that they come with. And that works good for me. Now,
will a tattle flag work with that setup?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that works great. Yep.
I might have to try that.
Will. Yeah, absolutely. If you're running that many boards out the side, there's really no reason not to trip it. I mean, there's some school of thought that when you trip it, the board goes back and that's a little slack line. But I mean, it doesn't just like fly back.
Yeah.
And I think if that would make you lose a fish, you're going to lose more fish by having tangles with your boards getting caught up and having to spend the time to drop them back and do all that stuff. So, yeah, I think that's definitely the way to go now. And then as far as, like, for setting them up for when you're using braided line, like for running our steel lines and lead core or just with braid, I've been running that Sam's Pro release on the front. That's got that little plunger that trips with the little arm that trips off it. And then in the back, I put the snapper release on the back now.
Yeah, I'm looking at that on your website right now.
That way I don't have to worry about wrapping. Yeah, with the OR16, a lot of times, even if you're tripping them with the monofilament, you want to keep a real close eye on your OR16 on the back, that red release with the pin in it.
Yeah.
And if you see any kind of wear on the pad or the pin, you want to start wrapping your line, because what happens, even with some of the monofilaments now, that when you trip your board, you trip it off the front release, that board can slide down the line a little bit.
Yeah, mine
are start wearing.
Mine are in bad shape, that's for sure. I need to get some new ones.
Yep.
Nick, listen, I'm almost out of time. Just real quick before we let you go, the last new product I think was the Easy Crankbait Tuner. Anything coming down the stretch to us?
We're working on a couple things. Like I said, it's been real slow for that end of it the last couple of years. We've been scrambling so hard just trying to keep up production with the other things. But we're working on a little bit. We'll see here coming up what we can come up with.
And I know it takes you guys a long time compared to other companies to bring product to market, because you don't do it until it's ready to rock. Nick DeShano, always a pleasure, and I'm sure we will talk again soon.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a great time.
Always. Nick DeShano of Offshore Tackle, the website offshoretackle.com, offshoretackle.com. Check out the website. There you can look at the products we were talking about, the boards, the Easy Crankbait Tuner, the orange pads, the red pads. Hey, listen, if you're a troller, you already know what I'm talking about. We'll take a break. When we come back, a few more thoughts as we get ready to wrap up this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Manistee on WTIQ, 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us in Saginaw on WSGW AM and FM, 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now for these 3 hours. This one corner of the building, Pat Johnston lets me take over his studio, and we call it the Outdoor Magazine studio. Pat Johnston doing a wonderful job. As always, Pat, I do certainly appreciate it. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard as they have for me. Landscaping, pools, patio work, water features, maintenance, mowing, spraying, mulching, trimming. Man, anything that you need to take care of your lawn and property, Reader can do it. And I tell you, they do a great job. Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. And there has been, there's been a Tom Turkey, there's been a Longbeard strutting in a field right next to Reader, driving me crazy because the season's over and he knows it. ReaderLandscaping.com is the website you want to check out. Also encourage you to check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Do not hesitate to reach out to me. A couple of things I want to follow up on. One specifically, and I was talking about this in the opening hour of this week's show. I had a wonderful opportunity last weekend to go to the Michigan State High School Trap Shooting Championship at the trap grounds there in Mason. There were 60 teams there, 1,100 shooters. They shot more than 100,000 rounds. Now, I was there because my grandson Carter is part of the local high school trap team. First time I've ever been around such a thing, so I was kind of fascinated to watch it, see how it all works. The thing that really, really got my attention, 1,100 kids, I'm going to call them kids, high school shooters there. Every one of them walking around with a gun in their hands. Every one of them. 1,100 guns on that property at one time. Well, there were more than that. Well, I know for a fact that there was at least 1,101, I can tell you that. Probably 3,000 people there to support those kids, between coaches, parents, grandparents. A wonderful event. Again, 1,100 kids with guns. 100,000 rounds, and not one crime committed. Not one evil act was perpetrated. Not one mass casualty event. Not one shooting of any type that was evil or illegal. The only shooting that was done was at clay targets in a safe manner each and every time that trigger was pulled. This just blows me away. How can anybody say that guns are the problem? Because there were more than 1,000 guns there that day and nothing bad happened. It just seems to me to be so blatantly obvious. Guns are not the problem. If guns were the problem, there would have been problems that day in Mason. Guns are not the problem. It's a people problem. And there that day, you had kids who were practicing safe firearm handling techniques. They were being supported, encouraged, and taught by their coaches, their parents, and their grandparents, and it was a wonderful event. I am so glad to learn more about this and to get more involved in this. I'm not a trap shooter. I'm not a skeet shooter. But any type of an activity that is associated with our local schools, this was a Michigan High School Trap Championship. 60 teams were there. So anything that can associate positive shooting experiences through high school programs, teach kids about guns and shooting, and put guns in the positive light that they should be, I am all about that. How can anybody look at an event like that and still keep the ignorant attitude that guns are a problem or guns are the problem? They're not. And this event was obvious and blatant proof of that. So congrats to all of the shooters. Congrats to the coaches. I just think it's a great, great event. Switching gears completely, I will be back on the water tomorrow. I've got a trip tomorrow, another charity trip tomorrow. I'll be fishing this weekend. I'm hoping that my run continues after getting a slow start on the bay this year for walleye. Things have kind of picked up for me. I've got some honey holes that I'm working over pretty good, and I think the fish are going to stay in there for a while. Not doing anything real special. I'm running number 7 flicker shads, number 7 flicker minnows, anywhere from 20 to 60 feet behind the boards. Been bouncing some spoons off the bottom with offshore Magnum tadpoles. Actually ran some spoons behind jet divers the other day. And, if you're in the right spot at the right time, when you've got active fish that are feeding, you're going to get fish. Not one crawler, though. Not one night crawler yet. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show, and when we come back, we'll wrap up this week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar. I do not know what kind of a recipe he has. I'm kind of hoping it's going to be a fish recipe because, this time of year, that's what we're doing. That's what we're concentrating on is fish. But if he comes up with something else, that would be fine. Again, my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Please check it out. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me with your questions, comments, criticism, questions for the Ask Avery segment, and more. Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Thank you so much for joining us this week here on the Outdoor Magazine show. If you are a new listener, that's wonderful. I appreciate you being along. Reach out, let me know what you think. Send me an email to Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. If you are a long-term listener, I also thank you very much for your support over the years and for being with me maybe for a long time. I know some of you that are listening to the show have been around since the old television show, and that's getting to be several years ago now. If you have been with me before, you know I like to wrap up each week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar, and this time around is no exception as the wild game master himself joins me once again. David, welcome back.
Wow, thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, it's easy to talk. It's easy to talk in kind terms about you, my friend, because you're a great guy and you have an extraordinary talent.
Well, I have practiced it for a long, long time. Actually. I've been in the kitchen around 50 years, maybe a little longer, 52.
50 years. So you started when you were, what, 5 years old must be?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay. What do you got for us this time, David?
I got a Mediterranean-style walleye. I originally used to do this with snapper and grouper in Florida, but it lends so well to walleye because walleye is one of them fish that picks up on the flavor you're trying to infuse into it. It's really good. Has no fishy taste at all to me. So, and on the east side of the bay and all over, I guess they're just slaying the walleye, man.
I noticed you said east side because, the west side of the bay has been a little slow lately.
Yep, I know guys that have been over there, and they've done very, very well. So anyway, we need about 8 to 10 ounces of boneless, skinless filet per person. You're going to need a couple of eggs beaten up, 1 onion sliced nice and thin, a couple of 2, 3, 4 cloves of garlic, whatever you like, diced up nice and fine. I like to have between 1/4 and 1/2 teaspoon of fresh, crushed pepper in this. Crush it a little more than you would for a poivre. You want to break that down a little more. About 1/2 cup of white wine. You could use either Italian spice or, if you like, put about 1/2 teaspoon of basil and oregano, or 3/4 to a teaspoon of the Italian spice, 12-ounce package of mushrooms sliced thin, about a nice heaping tablespoon of capers. Some people would like to crush this up because they're a little strong in the whole, but you could take and just smash them up a little bit, kind of break them up or chop them. And about 1/2 cup of Kalamata olives. There, you can slice them. They come sliced already and pitted. It's a Mediterranean way that they cure the olives, and it really has a lot of flavor. And I love using them in a lot of different dishes. So you need 1 can, 28-ounce of imported or California diced tomatoes with about half the juice. Kind of crush them up. You can hand crush them, put them in a bowl, and that works very, very well. And if it looks like it's a little dry, that's why we're going to reserve half of this juice. A couple tablespoons of chopped parsley, flour, olive oil, and Parmesan cheese to top with. So you're going to dredge the fish in flour, then in the eggs, and brown them on both sides. Start with the skin side down or the skin side up. So when you turn them, the rib side is up facing the diner. brown them off real good, put them in a casserole, and then you can just wipe out that pan with some paper towel and return it to the heat. Saute the onions and the garlic. And I like to put in the crushed pepper at this point because it's going to give it a lot of flavor when you're, going to end up with this. And then, you're going to add the white wine, the spices, the mushrooms, and capers, and cook that down by half, okay? Quite fast. Then you're going to add the olives and the tomatoes all the way through when it's boiling real good, and pour over the fish. Bake it uncovered, 350 degrees, because you got both sides of the fish that's already browning, and so you want only about 10-15 minutes tops. And then serve it with your favorite pasta. And then if you save some of that tomato juice, you can add to it and then spoon it over pasta and on the fish too, topped with parsley and Parmesan cheese. And I tell you what, to me, this is a really good way. We've done this with a lot of different fishes.
It sounds wonderful. I have a real quick question for you because we're out of time. When you say 8 to 10 ounces of meat, what is that? Is like that one fillet on a 17-inch fish, or what?
Yeah. Yep. 7 to 8 ounces is what you're going to get off of that 17-inch fish.
Perfect. Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire, always a great recipe, and this time lots of great information as well, David. I look forward to talking to you next time as we do another Outdoor Magazine show, as we've done for years and years, and will continue well into the future if, well, God willing, we will. Again, my email address, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com, the website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Be sure to check those out. And if you would like to try Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dave Minar's cooking in person, check out Oscar and Joey's Roadhouse in Birch Run here in the great state of Michigan. Thursday through Sunday, I think, are their hours. You can also find me, I do Wednesday night lives on my social media outlets every Wednesday night at 7, Behind the Mic segment on those same social media outlets Wednesday mornings at 8:45, and you can always find me via email and the website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com and Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com.